bits of information, but it was Sunday morning. I sat down in this talk with this woman, Claire Ludlow. She was giving a talk on A Course in Miracles. And within a few minutes of her 1-hour presentation, I knew I was going to move to Amherst, Massachusetts and study A Course in Miracles with Claire Ludlow. So Claire was the second surrogate mother for me. She was an amazing woman. She and her husband, Ben, were really like my surrogate mother and father, and helping me to rebirth myself, helping to build something new. And so now I'm having this relationship with Jesus via Course in Miracles, very uncomfortable relationship at first. And I shared with Claire my resistance to Jesus being the teacher. And she said, well, that's not uncommon. A lot of people like you are not overtly willing to have a relationship with a Christian God or Jesus Christ himself. So she recommended that I do some like lucid dreaming, like tell myself before going to sleep, I'm going to dream. She said, let's just focus on dreaming about your biological family. And I'm like, okay. So I remember the first night I had a dream that had involved two of my sisters, and don't remember the details of that dream. But I think it was either the second or the third night I had this very powerful dream where where remembering the moments after my visit with Rena Sircar, walking down Dolores Boulevard in San Francisco, and just being kind of stunned, kind of like numb from the prophecy about my life. Anyway, in the dream, so I'm walking down Dolores Boulevard after my meeting with Rena, and suddenly there's this earthquake. Everything goes quiet. The birds stop chirping, and I'd like, no, I was like, holy shit. And then everything starts to, really dramatic earthquake, buildings falling, everything going crazy, fires exploding from broken gas mains and whatever, just pandemonium. A car pulls up in front of me. It's my biological family, mom and dad in the front seat, little sister between them, two older sisters in the back, my spot next to them. The back door flies open like, jump in, jump in, jump in. Buzzy, that was my name as a boy, Buzzy. And I'm like, no, I don't say it, I just like, no, everything was so loud. No. So the car door closes and the car speeds off. Immediately, this rope ladder falls in front of my face. And without even thinking about it, I just reach up and grab it. And it's a helicopter, lifts me off the ground, and I'm seeing this bedlam pandemonium down below me. And I look up and there's a friendly face waving to me from the body of the helicopter. Come on, come on, come on, climb up here. So I climb up the ladder and I enter the body of the helicopter, and they close the door, and it was like this thump. Everything's so quiet. And I look in the room, and it's this circle of chairs. Everybody, all the chairs are filled. All these people are looking at me. No one says a word. They just look at me with these bright eyes, like smiling, like, welcome, you're home. And it's interesting that the room was totally, the floor and the ceiling and the walls, totally like covered in like a red velvet. And it was a circular room. So I realized afterwards, this was like the womb, right? being rebirthed. And so anyway, so I'm in the womb, and I could hear this thump, 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 very quiet. Outside was the rotor from the helicopter. And there's one chair across the way that was available. So I started walking toward that, and they're like, no, 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 no. Pointing to the cockpit. You're supposed to, your chair is up in the cockpit. So I go up and I see the pilot, and he's just looking straight out ahead, flying. And he's just like nods with his head, sit down in the co-pilot seat. I'm like, really? Okay. So I sit down and put in my harness, seatbelt, look out the window briefly, all the wreckage down below, fires everywhere. It's just crazy. But in the helicopter, it's really quiet, but for the thump, 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 thump of the rotor. And after a moment, he says to me, so what airport do you fly out of? And I'm like, what? Let me just say, what? And he said, what airport do you fly out of? So now I realize that he's making a reference to me as if I'm a pilot like him. And I just say, I'm not a pilot. He turns to look at me. And he just has this look in his eyes like, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. He didn't say anything, he just looks at me. Yeah, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you, you're a pilot just like me. So this was a beginning of a time in my life that I call flying lessons, that I was getting flying lessons from Jesus. And I remember as a boy, I always knew how to fly, because I was afraid of monsters and Nazi soldiers or whatever. I'd be having one type of nightmare or another. And in my dream as a boy, I knew that I could just run and go into the Superman position and start flying. And I'd fly up over the trees and over the mountains and always could escape, always beautiful. And I remember even in these dreams, one other thing that I learned, part of lucid dreaming, was that because I knew I was actually in my bed sleeping, in my dream, I could dive under the water as another way to escape from the Nazi soldiers, and I could breathe and just sit there underwater until they went away. So it was really interesting that now, many years later, I'm being taught again, because I'd forgotten. I didn't have the ability just to run and jump Superman style. So Jesus taught me how to, just like I did with the helicopter, reach up and grab like a rope ladder and just pull yourself up. Really just grabbing the air, reach up and grab the air, just pull yourself up. Do that 2 or 3 times and now I'm 15 feet off the ground. I can just sort of rotate forward and then take off. So I was learning again how to fly. And again, like I'd say, the purpose of flying was to escape the danger. As a child, my life was filled with danger. The dream represented that, the earthquake, and reaching up and grabbing, trusting, and flying above the danger of the world. So Claire and Ben, Amherst, Massachusetts, the whole experience I had there was truly a rebirthing. Amherst was truly a womb. And I knew, but I'd made a deal with myself. This was again part of the guidance to set certain markers. Okay, and a marker was going to be 3 years sober. So now, 1988 November, 3 years sober. I know I'm supposed to leave the womb, but I had no idea where I was supposed to go. So I'd been really very involved with AA, went to a lot of 12-step meetings and loved speaking, loved telling my story, loved the unconditional acceptance you get there. It's a great place to practice speaking, public speaking for sure. So I remember talking after a meeting once with a couple of fellows and just saying, I know I'm supposed to move on and the next step in my life, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do, where I'm supposed to go. And one of them said, well, there's this teaching center. You might be interested. A lot of people like you that are very bright and have a background in psychology, you might be interested in becoming a CD, chemical dependency counselor. There's a new program that's been started out in Minnesota by this place called Hazelden, a very big healing center. And I just knew immediately, that's it. I'll make an application. And I remember I had to go out and go through an application process there in Center City, Minnesota. They accepted me, and I remember wrapping up my life in Amherst and flying out to Minnesota in end of January 1989. I remember arriving at this place, Center City, and they just had, they're using a converted motel on the main road, Center City, Minnesota, or actually it was down the road a bit. And it was the middle of this frozen tundra. I'd never been in Minnesota. I'd never been in a winter like this before. Everything is frozen. All the lakes are frozen. Everything's white. It's really cold in Minnesota. So I remember just getting there going like, wow, this is so amazing. I never would have expected that I would be in the frozen tundra of Minnesota. Well, this, left the womb for the second time. First time, leaving Janet, second time leaving Amherst, Massachusetts. And it's like, this is strange. Everything about the whole experience was strange, and I don't think I really fit in very well. Not really much of an institution guy. Like, I didn't fit in the Air Force Academy. I was gone in a year. And here this other institution. I remember this woman, Dorothy, the head of the CED counselor training program, telling me, I've heard you're teaching a class or something. You're doing something with A Course in Miracles. And I said, well, yeah, I'm facilitating a group. It's been a big part of my life now. And I'm facilitating a group. She goes, well, I don't think it's a good idea that you interfere with your studies. And I remember saying to her, Dorothy, it's like telling me not to go to my church. You wouldn't tell someone to not go to church on Sunday, would you? Anyway, she didn't like that response at all. So when the first quarter assessment happened, she said, they'd given me this, MMPI psychological inventory. And I remember Dorothy saying to me, well, it just seems to me you're a square peg trying to fit into a round hole, and I'm going to terminate your training here. So this was like in May. I remember walking down the street back to the motel. She'd given me 10 days to pack up and move out. I remember crying a little bit, which is pretty common in my early years of sobriety. I cried a lot because I was feeling all my feelings. I remember crying and going like, wow. And again, like when I was going to leave the halfway house, I knew I wasn't going to go back to Connecticut. Walking down this street on a lovely spring day in Minnesota, I remember thinking to myself, well, I know I'm not supposed to go back east. And I didn't really have any inclination at the time to go back to California, which I really had enjoyed my 10 years there. I remember just thinking, I'm supposed to stay here in the heartland, right? I didn't really know how, but as it turned out, in my Course in Miracles group, there was a woman. She was an acquisition editor. Hazelden has a very big publishing company in the specialty spirituality and healing and all of that. And she really liked my way of integrating A Course in Miracles with the 12 steps. And so she asked me if I would consider doing a book, or maybe actually it'd be better as a booklet series, sort of 12 booklets focused on the 12 steps, integrating the wisdom of A Course in Miracles. And I'm like, that would be amazing. That'd be perfect. So she sold that idea to her upper echelon of the publishing company, and I had a contract with a little advance and everything to write this book. So I got an apartment nearby in St. Croix Falls, Wisconsin, just across the river, and started writing this book. Anyway, the main thing that was going to happen that summer wasn't really the book. It was my sister Lynn, and her suicide. I remember mom calling me crying July 4th, actually, and telling me that Lynn had hanged herself, and she was actually not completely dead. She was on life support in a coma. And as she's telling me this voice whispers in my ear, pay attention.